We have called this press briefing essentially to inform Nigerians about the crisis in Rivers State, to condemn very clearly the unconstitutional state of emergency in Rivers State, to clarify constitutional concerns and propose solutions that will help foster national dialogue and accountability. Because we do not make any assumptions that every Nigerian, and of course the international community, understands the background and context of the crisis in Rivers State. We are going to proceed in a slightly different way. So before we commence with the press briefing proper, we will take a couple of minutes and ask my colleagues that are here with me to provide some insights into the crisis in Rivers State. Hopefully that will aid better appreciation of some of the issues we will raise in the course of the press briefing. To start us off, I'm going to invite someone who I believe needs no introduction. I'd like to invite Aisha Yusufu to come forward and speak to us with regards to the timeline and causes of the crisis in Rivers State. Understanding of the constitutional violations and precedents in the Rivers State crisis, I'd like to invite Mujirayo.
As a lawyer in Nigeria, I think one of the things that you learn in fact, not even at law school, you learn it even in the university, is that the Constitution is the ground norm and as all the, the prerequisites for a functional democracy. And a lot of times, one of the things that you learn as a lawyer is that the interpretation that comes with each of the provisions of the Constitution. And it's very unfortunate that this time in our history, we have to come back to Section 305, talking about the powers of the president to actually declare a state of emergency. There is no doubt that Section 305 has laid down the procedure for any president within a federation to declare a state of emergency. But in this particular case, what we should be asking ourselves is very simple. Did the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria follow the due process and the rule of law? Which I would clearly say, no, it's not. And why would I say that? Okay, Section 305 of this Constitution, I'll try as much as possible not to bore you because there are several processes, provisions under that. And first and foremost, the president can declare a state of emergency, if the country is at war, if there is imminent situation of war or invasion, as the situation would be. If I was going to liken the situations in this kind of scenario, I may say, yes, it was in order that the president, Goodluck Jonathan administration had, ordered state of emergency in the, I think it's Borno state and all that, which makes more sense. Now, if you look further into Section 305, you see where it says that if there is a likelihood of public safety and public order being affected, and then there is something I love about the drafters of the Constitution, which I believe that a lot of people try to miss it because of the mischief in their hearts. Now, it says that the public safety and public order must be threatened to the extent, that is the word, extent. It says to the extent that it requires an extraordinary measure for the restoration of peace and order. So what question we as lawyers and as people who really believe in the democracy of a nation like Nigeria should be asking ourselves, the situation in Rivers State, has it gotten to the point where the public safety and public order is being threatened to the extent that it requires extraordinary measures? I am aware that the president has given a reason stating that there has been vandalization of pipelines. But the question is, how often has pipelines been vandalized in Nigeria, and how often has the president of a democratic nation actually issued a state of emergency? Now, let's move further. The Section 305 further states that in the situation where the president actually declares or proclaims a state of emergency, then you would would send a copy of a gazette. Of course, it has to be registered in a gazette. You send the copies to the National Assembly. Now, the National Assembly has the duties as lawmakers and people representing the majority of the people. We shouldn't forget that power lies with the people. They are representatives. And yes, we understand that under the state of emergency, as outlined in Section 305, it gives them a very short window. It gives them 2 days in a situation where they are sitting, they are in session. And then it says, okay, peradventure you are not in session. We give you 10 days to actually decide and come up with a 2/3 majority vote of each house of, houses of the National Assembly. And so what that clearly states is this. For you to approve the state of emergency that has been declared by the president, the members of the Senate, let's say, okay, the members of the Senate, 109, it means that at least 73 members, 73 senators must assent to that proclamation. Then, for the 360 members of the House of Representatives, it clearly states at least 240 members of the House of Representatives would assent to that proclamation. Now, what did we see play out? I'm happy that Aisha Yusufu had already, enunciated that. We saw a situation where legislators, people representing the majority of Nigerians, went into plenary or went into this meeting that they convened, and we saw that if you know that you are in support of it, say aye. For a constitutional requirement that says 2/3 majority, what I believe the drafters of the Constitution have clearly provided without any form of equivocation or any form of ambiguity is that at least each member of that chamber would rise up and say, I am in agreements with the proclamation by the president. That will be recorded, number one. Another person will get up, and that should have been the process that should have been sanctioned by both houses of National Assembly. But unfortunately, at this time in history, Nigerians are seeing a situation where their legislators, with a voice vote, approved the proclamation of the president. This is clearly unconstitutional. There is nothing else we can say about that. And it is against the tenets of democracy, and it is antithetical to the rule of law, simple as it is. And not only that, the Supreme Court in 2007 had already clarified this, that, the president has the authority to declare a state of emergency. But in doing so, he cannot, for any reason, remove a governor of a state. And why is that? Because the Constitution has laid it down in Section 188 of the Constitution, the processes for removing a governor. It is either it is an impeachment that is done by the House of Assembly, it is done by death, it is by resignation, and not ever, there was never any outline that says in case of there is a threat to the public safety and public order in which the president now has to declare a state of emergency. That is not what is in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And that shows clearly that there's been an overreach by the president of the federation, and this is also unconstitutional. And then we shouldn't forget that very beautiful provision in the Constitution. The Constitution have always been we, the people of Nigeria. And then Section 1 clearly says that if there are any laws or any actions, anything that is inconsistent with the provision of this Constitution, they must be declared null, a nullity to the extent of their inconsistency. And I believe that what has happened so far in the issue between the president and the Rivers State is an unconstitutionality and inconsistent with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that very. Dr. Boluwaji Onabolu, Executive Director for Mothers United and Mobilize. She will help us understand the implications and solutions to the crisis in Rivers State. Doctor.
Thank you very much. Mothers United and Mobilized, we are very, very serious about the importance of the youth of Nigeria being able to enjoy the human rights in the land of their birth, Nigeria. And I'll use the word that seems to be an elephant in the room: executive coup. There has been a coup against our youth, against every Nigerian. The two speakers before me have laid it very clear that what the president has done is not just unconstitutional, it is anti-constitutional, it is anti-democracy, where a president abrogates to himself the unilateral decision to remove a sitting governor, the governor's deputy, and the whole House of Assembly of a state. Basically, what it means to civil society, to you and to me, is that he nullified, he desecrated your vote and my vote. And that cannot stand. Furthermore, in a time of democracy, where people, including our president, as chairperson of ECOWAS, spoke against a military coup, we see that bringing in a retired military person as sole administrator and deploying 10,000 soldiers sends a message that perhaps the president is saying that democracy does not work. Furthermore, it has been stated here clearly that the Constitution does not allow the president to remove somebody, not just one person, the people that we elected, while protecting the person he appointed. So in terms of rule of law, desecrating the rule of law, which is what has been done, where even the president swore in this military man before the National Assembly had sat. He usurped the powers of the Chief Justice, and that is terrible optics that we must not forget and we must not allow to stand, where a single person stands and asks a military person, a former military person, to sign and take office before our representatives have sat. Consequently, no elected governor is safe in this country, especially if he belongs to the opposition party of a sitting president. In terms of economic disruption on your lives, on our children's lives, it is massive. We already see many companies exiting Nigeria because the rule of law is essential to stability. And then the issue of distrust, public distrust. It's a generational issue. I was talking to someone yesterday who I didn't even know, but he was just saying that his son asked him, "Mom, Dad, what is the meaning of state of emergency?" And he said, he told the child, "Go and ask your mother." Because he didn't know how he would explain to the child that something so against our Constitution, it's not just the state of emergency, but the way it was done. So our values are being eroded. And so, in terms of this public distrust, we are, as civil society, as ordinary people of Nigerians, we are saying that this state of emergency, this suspension, is null, it is void, it is not just unconstitutional, it is anti our Constitution, it is a slap in our faces that our representatives in the National Assembly went into a closed vote, and in such a serious matter, they did ayes and nays. And we say no. And we're asking you, each one of you, to call your representatives and say they must not vote, against your vote, which is what they essentially have done. We sent them there, and you can recall them.
About the House of Assembly throwing their support to the President for what he did. In fact, I will say that I'm actually surprised, as I'm sure members of the media are, that the governor of Fubara has not thrown his support for the President for what he did, because we are Nigerians and we know what politics is in Nigeria and how it works. But on a serious note, we are not interested in who supports who does not support who. We are interested in the ground norm of Nigeria, the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. We are a constitutional and representative democracy. If we, the people, have agreed that we want to practice democracy, it simply means that every action that is taken by elected government officials should be consistent with the Constitution. Members of the House of Assembly of Rivers State have the right to support whoever they want to. Can support Fubara, President Tinubu. Wike is none of our business. It only speaks to character and integrity. That's the minimum we can say. But to the extent that the Constitution of the Federal Republic is threatened, then each and every one of us must immediately, actively occupy our office of the citizen to say no. This will not stand, and this will not happen.
Of that state, they add section 188, which says that they can impeach the governor of the state. So it's quite questionable that they are now, this thing about supporting. I find that very, very impossible, in fact, because if they had issues, they should have gone through section 188 of the Constitution and then impeach the governor. And then we will not be here now having this kind of conversation.
Thank you. There really isn't any lacuna there. And I like the fact that you already referenced the Plateau case. I think that was under former President Obasanjo. I think the Supreme Court has been as clear as they can be in interpreting the Constitution, that there is no provision, there's no clause, there's nothing in the Constitution that empowers a democratic president to remove another duly elected official, be they members of the State House of Assembly, be they members of the National Assembly, be they sitting elected governors. There are no powers. Even as a lay person, you can interpret Section 305 yourself. There are no powers here that says he can remove the governor. Section 188, as my colleague has stated, clarifies that. The House of Assembly has the power to suspend, to impeach the governor. The governor has the power to also resign. Or, in the case where there is a death, the governor can leave the office. But there's nowhere from beginning to end, the Constitution says, under ABC circumstances, the president can remove. So there's nothing, again, for the Supreme Court to interpret. We've had three state of emergencies where the governor was not removed. I'm sure you're aware of that. Why? Because of the interpretation of the Supreme Court. So instead of President Tinubu to follow the precedent that is on ground, he's now taking us back to the woods. Yeah. So rather than go forward, we are going backwards. So there's actually there's no confusion there. There's no ambiguity in Section 305. It is very clear. And that is why it became very urgent and very necessary that we speak the minds of Nigerians, the minds of citizens, so that the president understands clearly that this overreach is not acceptable and will not be accepted. I don't think any of us here knows the law better than them. The president of the Nigerian Bar Association has spoken. And it is clear that the president acted outside of his powers. This is an overreach. So it's clear. If you listen to all the commentators, everyone, traditional rulers, opinion leaders, opposition figures, everybody has been very clear on this. This is an overreach, and it will not stand. Yes, we'll take one last question, and then we'll proceed to the press briefing. Quick. First, I agree with you. There's a lot that is wrong with the 1999 Constitution, and I doubt if there's anybody here who doesn't agree that there's a lot that is wrong with the 1999 Constitution. Unfortunately, that's not what we are here today. But I can assure you that fixed politics has been a clear leader in terms of advocating for a change of the 1999 Constitution. We've advanced arguments, we've advanced processes, how that can be achieved effectively. And there are so many other civil society organizations here that are in agreement that the beginning position for any effective, sustainable reform of our polity must be a change of the 1999 Constitution, not an amendment, a change of that Constitution. But that's a conversation for another day. But if you follow the conversation in the public domain, you'll find that Fixed Politics Initiative is a clear leader in advocating for the change of the 1999 Constitution. With regards to your second question about if we're going to court, we believe that that will be a final option. That is not the immediate option. If you listen, when I started, I said we are here to help propose solutions that will foster national dialogue and accountability. We believe that there's still opportunity for the National Assembly to do the right thing, to hold the executive branch accountable and compel them to do the right thing. We believe there's still an opportunity for the executive branch to go back and do a rethink and say, okay, fine, this has created unintended consequences in the country in terms of the crisis, in terms of the loss of trust of citizens, which is a critical currency for our leaders to be able to function, and therefore we are going to take a second look at this and make some changes. That is our expectation, that through dialogue, that we can get both the executive branch and the legislative branch to do the right thing. However, if in the event, which we don't expect, that fails, then we'll have no other choice than to go to the judiciary and litigate this matter and ensure that this kind of constitutional overreach is not sustained. Central focus is on the breach of the 1999 Constitution. And we believe that that is a major danger in our democracy. If we allow this to go, it means there will be more. It will encourage the executive, it will encourage the legislature to do even worse tomorrow. So we'll not go into the political issues that are very clear and very obvious. We'll leave them at that. What precisely was your specific question again? I think what should have been done, it's an open-ended question. There's so many things that could have been done. I think that if the president was sincere, and I use that word very carefully, if the president was sincere, if he was non-partisan, this problem would have been resolved in 2023. In other words, it would have been resolved 2 years ago. It would have been resolved 2 years ago. Amicably. It would have been resolved amicably, and the problem would have ended. Okay? But we all know what has transpired between 2023, and from what our colleagues discussed, we know what has transpired between then and now. There are several options, several ways that this matter could have been mitigated without coming. State of emergency is a last resort. It's a last resort in times of very severe crisis that threatens. There's nothing in Rivers State that has happened that 10 times worse hasn't happened in other states. And we haven't had a state of emergency. Almost the entire nation is unanimous in condemning the state of emergency, apart from partisans in APC who support the president. Even some partisans are against it. It is very clear that this is not the way to go. Elders of Rivers State could have addressed this matter. The president could have called his minister to order. In fact, the only one the president has the constitutional powers to suspend or to dismiss is the FCT minister. The one that he has no powers to suspend is the one he decided to suspend. Because the governor was elected by the electorate. His position is from the electorate. Wike's position is from the president. He serves at the prerogative of Mr. President. Like I said at the beginning, if we have decided as a nation that democracy is the way to go, we must start learning how to practice it. How to be faithful to the tenets and ethos of democracy. That is what this is all about. We are not getting into the political issues that surround it. That's a conversation for another day. Before we commence our press briefing, I'd like to also say that we have over 300 civil society organizations and citizens of Nigeria that have endorsed the statement that I'm about to read. And for purposes of accountability and transparency, I will read their names out loud at the end of the statement. Members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is indeed a defining moment for our democracy. Our goal today is to, through transparency and democratic integrity, attempt to provide clarity on the crisis in Rivers State and, very importantly, define the urgent actions that need to be taken to address the unconstitutional actions that have been taken in Rivers State. I will now attend to our statement. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, fellow Nigerians, we unequivocally condemn President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State and the subsequent removal of the democratically elected governor, deputy governor, and members of the State House of Assembly for 6 months in the first instance, according to him. These actions constitute an executive coup against the people of Rivers State, a flagrant abuse of executive power, a violation of Nigeria's constitutional order, and an undermining of democracy. We agree that it is the prerogative of the President of Nigeria to declare a state of emergency and that the President can exercise the legal authority to make such a declaration under specific conditions as outlined in the Constitution. However, this power is not absolute. It is subject to legislative oversight and judicial review to prevent abuse, as has happened in this instance. Contrary to the Constitution, we have witnessed abuse of power, disregard of due process, and the violation of democratic principles with the President's imposition of a state of emergency and appointment of an unconstitutional administrator in Rivers State, and the National Assembly's complicity in ratifying unconstitutionality. This is clearly a travesty on the rule of law and contrary to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We have noted that there are several constitutional violations, which include, but are not limited to, 1, abuse of presidential prerogative, Section 305 of the 1999 Constitution. While the President has the legal authority to declare a state of emergency under Section 305 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, this power is not a blank check for dictatorship. The sequence of events, including the pipeline explosions, which are now doubtful, and the impeachment proceedings against the governor, makes the call for a state of emergency suspicious. 2, unconstitutional and opaque actions of the National Assembly. Section 305(2) requires that any proclamation for a state of emergency be submitted to the National Assembly for approval within 2 days. or 10 days if the National Assembly is not in session, without which the emergency ceases to have effect. The Constitution requires 2/3 of each chamber of the National Assembly to ratify the order. This means 73 out of 109 senators and 240 out of 360 members of the House of Representatives. Yesterday, the House of Representatives approved the state of emergency by voice vote. By voice vote. While a member raised a point of order from the floor, he was silenced. In the Senate, they had a closed-door executive session. How can citizens ensure the provisions of the constitutions were followed? The presidency made matters worse by applauding the clear desecration of the Nigerian Constitution. The judiciary must immediately strike down this blatant violation of Nigeria's constitutional democracy. 3, illegitimate removal of elected officials, Section 188, and federalism provisions. The Constitution does not support the unilateral dismissal of Rivers State elected leaders or the elected leaders of any other state for that matter, which is an egregious violation of Nigeria's federal structure. Section 188 sets out the due process for the removal of a governor, which requires due process, legislative inquiry, and judicial oversight. No such process occurred. Chapters VI and VII protect the autonomy of state governments within Nigeria's federal structure. The president's actions set a dangerous precedent. If left unchallenged, they will set the stage for the arbitrary dismissal of any elected state government at the president's whim, rendering Nigeria's democracy and people's mandate meaningless. The president does not have the power to arbitrarily dismiss state officials. His actions are dictatorial and illegal and must be resisted by all Nigerians. Our demands. 1, immediate reversal of the state of emergency. We demand an immediate reversal of the unconstitutional removal of the governor, deputy governor, and House of Assembly members in Rivers State. For the simple reason, as we have stated above, that the president does not have the constitutional authority to remove these officials. 2, legislative oversight. We call on members of the National Assembly who were not part of yesterday's charade to speak up against the violation of the Constitution. We also call on Nigerians to make their displeasure known to their representatives. The National Assembly is the highest lawmaking body in the country, and they must not be allowed to get away with choosing which of Nigerians' laws they want to obey and when they will obey it. 3, judiciary operating on merit. There will be several lawsuits in the coming days, and I'm sure we all know that, if this matter is not quickly addressed by the National Assembly and the executive branch. We require the judiciary to review each case on its merit and not rely on technicalities to dismiss the cases. 4, restoration of constitutional order. We urge all stakeholders, including the judiciary, civil society, and the international community, to closely monitor the situation in Rivers State and ensure that any emergency measures are strictly in line with constitutional and democratic principles. 5, citizens' vigilance. We urge Nigerians to leverage available channels to demand a reversal of the state of emergency in Rivers State and push for a functional democracy. Nigerians must not stay silent. We urge citizens to write to their representatives, mobilize within their communities, and demand action through peaceful protests and other lawful means. History has shown that when unconstitutional acts like this go unchallenged, they become the norm. If Rivers is silenced today, no state is safe tomorrow. In conclusion, we remain committed to upholding the Constitution, defending democratic governance, and ensuring that the rule of law prevails in Nigeria. We call on the Nigerian government to live up to its mandate according to the Nigerian Constitution and not be a cog in the wheel that threatens the democratic rights of the people of Rivers State and all Nigerians. We stand in solidarity with the people of Rivers State as they demand the restoration of constitutional order within the ambit of the law. We stand united in defense of our constitutional order and democratic ideals. The removal of elected officials under the guise of emergency powers is unconstitutional and must be rejected in the strongest possible terms. I thank you all for listening. As I promised earlier, for the purposes of transparency and democratic integrity, I will proceed to read out all the names of the organizations and individuals that signed the statement that I have just read. I start now. Number 1, Fix Politics Initiative. 2, Accountability Lab Nigeria. 3, Budget Foundation. 4, Bo Foundation for Inclusive Media. 5, Campaign for a New Nigeria. 6, Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development. 7, DigiCivic Initiative. 8, DoTakeAction.org. 9, Ebenezer Care Missions. 10, Enough is Enough Nigeria. 11, Feminist Manifesto. 12, Fund ELG Africa. 13, Global Rights. 14, Human Rights Journalists Network. 15, Initiative for Research, Innovation, and Advocacy in Development. 16, International Press Center. 17, Lawyers Network Against Corruption. 18, Lex Initiative for Rights Advocacy and Development. Is this? 19, Mandate4.org. 20, Media Rights Agenda. 21, Mothers United and Mobilize. 22, Policy Alert. 23, Progressive Abia Youth. 24, Cesar Empowerment Foundation. 25, TAF Africa. 26, TEM Foundation. 27, the Electoral Hub. 28, the Rule of Law and Empowerment Initiative. 29, Upline Center for Development. 30, WARDC Africa.